Hello, everyone. 3 American men, or rather teenagers, in 1994 were found guilty of murdering 3 young boys in West Memphis, Arkansas, allegedly as part of devil worship. Damien Echols, born December 11th, 1974, Jason Baldwin, born April 11th, 1977, and Jesse Miskelly Jr., born July 10th, 1975. On May 5th, 1993, Christopher Byers, Michael Moore, and Stevie Branch, all of whom were 8 years old, went bike riding in West Memphis. Later that evening, their parents reported the boys missing. The following day, law officers found their naked bodies that had been hogtied in the drainage ditch in the forested area known as Robin Hood Hills. The boys had been beaten, and Byers' body showed signs of mutilation. The police believed that the murderers were connected to Satan worship. Almost immediately, they interviewed Damien Echols, who was 18 at the time, a dropout from high school and a self-proclaimed Wiccan, who the town considered to be a troublemaker. Damien suffered from depression. He denied knowing the boys or being involved in their death. Police remained focused on Echols, and they received the help from Vicky Hutchinson, whose 8-year-old was friends with the victims and claimed to have witnessed their murders, but was unable to identify the assailants. In a meeting with the police, she was told that Echols had been interviewed, and she offered to play detective by meeting with him. With the encouragement of law officers, she enlisted the help of Miss Kelly, a 17-year-old neighbor who knew Echols. According to Hutchinson, on May 19, 1993, she, Miss Kelly, and Echols attended a gathering of witches at the nearby field. She then claimed that the proceedings devolved into an orgy, at which point she asked Echols to take her home. Miss Kelly stayed. Hutchinson later related the events to the police and reportedly passed a polygraph test. Armed with this information, police interviewed Miss Kelly, who reportedly had an IQ of about 72. Despite initially denying involvement in the crime, he eventually confessed, saying that he had helped detain the 3 young boys, but left before Echols and a 16-year-old, Jason Baldwin, who were friends, committed the murders. All 3 were arrested on June 1993, though no physical evidence connected them to the crime, and each of them had alibis. Miss Kelly was tried separately, and his trial began in January 94. His attorney focused on Miss Kelly's confession, which he alleged had been coerced. Notably, earlier versions of his statement differed from the physical evidence. He falsely claimed that the boys had been sexually assaulted, and that they had been tied with rope when they were actually tied with shoestrings. Among other discrepancies, the police claimed that Miss Kelly was simply confused. On February 4th, 1994, he was found guilty of first-degree murder, as well as second-degree, and was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. The trial of Echols, who was viewed as the leader, and Baldwin started shortly thereafter. Miss Kelly refused to testify, and the prosecution was forced to rely on circumstantial evidence, notably Echols' interest in the occult. The prosecution also introduced evidence it believed to be incriminating, such as the fact that Eccles read Stephen King and listened to Metallica. In addition, a fellow inmate testified that Baldwin had confessed to the murders, and 2 girls claimed to have overheard Eccles confess during a softball game. The defense sought to introduce other suspects, notably a local teenager who left for California shortly after the bodies were discovered, and who said that he might have committed the crimes before recanting. However, the judge refused to let him testify before the jury. On March 18, 1994, Eccles and Baldwin were found guilty of first-degree murder. Eccles was later sentenced to death, and Baldwin was given life without parole. The case had attracted the attention of filmmakers and resulted in the making of a documentary, Paradise Lost: The Child Murders at Robin Hood Hills. It brought awareness to the case and a lot of doubt about their guilt. Later, Paradise Lost 2: Revelations made it even a more high-profile case. Pearl Jam, Johnny Depp, as well as Metallica, became vocal supporters of the defendants. In 2004, Hutchinson recanted, claiming she had lied at the urging of police, who had allegedly threatened to implicate her in the murders if she did not cooperate. In 2007, a hair found in a knot on one of the victims was sent for DNA. DNA proved that the hair did not belong to either of the accused. They found it to be consistent with Terry Hobbs, the stepfather of Stevie Branch. Another hair found placed a friend of Hobbs at the crime scene as well. Hobbs, of course, denied any involvement. A judge vacated all 3 convictions on August 19, 2011, immediately after they pled guilty, while maintaining their innocence through the Alford plea. They were released after being sentenced to time served and received a 10-year suspended sentence. The release was documented in Paradise Lost 3: Purgatory, even though in another documentary titled West of Memphis, other suspects were mentioned. The courts closed the case. Eccles published a book in 2012, Life After Death, and Yours for Eternity, a love story on death row, in 2014.